Welcome back. Today, former Republican Congressman Peter Meijer announced he is running for U.S. Senate. He's joining an already packed field of candidates who are trying to fill retiring Senator Debbie Stabenow's seat.
Meijer is a member of the West Michigan dynasty known as the supermarket chain and numerous philanthropic causes. As a member of the U.S. House of Representatives representing Grand Rapids, Meijer was among 35 Republicans to approve establishing the January 6th Commission and one of 10 GOP congressmen voting to impeach former President Donald Trump.
He was first elected in 2020 but lost his re-election bid in 2022. Peter Meijer joins us now over Zoom. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on this evening.
So let's just start with the elevator pitch. Why should Michigan voters choose you to represent them in the Senate?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I'm not the type of guy who can stand on the sidelines, and especially when there are so many challenges that we're facing, right? I mean, we're talking about a moment of unparalleled uncertainty in terms of America's standing in the world while we're dealing with a severe economic and fiscal crisis brought on by excessive government spending that has led to high interest rates and inflation. And we just have this generalized concern that things are not going in the right direction. Right. If you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always gotten. I want to offer something different to the voters of Michigan. And that's not only a voice who is willing to say some hard and unpleasant truths, but also somebody who has a vision for how we make sure that by 2050, we're looking at a second great American century. It's about vision, but also connecting that with policies to get there and a practical means of implementing them. And I look forward to sharing that with voters throughout Michigan in the coming months.
As we've mentioned, there are several other Republicans hoping to get that primary nomination, James Craig and Mike Rogers, just to name a few. What do you think sets you apart from some of them?
No, I have a lot of respect for the other folks who have entered into this fray. It's certainly not easy to run any race. I know both Mike and Chief Craig understand that, having put their hats in the ring before. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the differentiator, I have a demonstrated track record of not just falling in line, of being willing to fall on my sword, but frankly, more importantly, taking that long-term vision. Right? I've got some of them have a couple of decades on me, and this is going to be a long-term project if we're going to turn things around. I spent enough time on the Senate side when I was in Congress to know that that's where you have folks who are focused on the legislation, not necessarily responding just to whatever crisis of the day we're dealing with that will always be repeated and quickly forgotten, but where there is an ability to get things done if you have both the will and the capacity.
And Peter, you mentioned a willingness to say difficult things that others might not be willing to say. And earlier today, the Michigan Republican Party posted on X that Peter Meijer voted to impeach President Trump. Remember that. Then quickly deleted that tweet, said it was an intern who posted it and it didn't represent the GOP. But many analysts suggest that that is the reason. That willingness to speak against former President Trump was the reason you were unable to win election a year ago. So I guess what's different now? Do you regret anything about the way you handled that? And what makes you confident in running for this statewide office now?
Yeah, just on the tweet real quickly, I don't think there's a person alive who's been on social media who hasn't shot something off and then a couple of seconds later said, maybe that wasn't the wisest thing to do. I'm certainly guilty of that in plenty of instances. But at the end of the day, I'm going to call balls and strikes. I'm going to say things as I see them. I have criticized the president and I've criticized his former President Trump in the past, and including that vote to impeach. At the same time, I've been giving him credit for areas where he has done great work and defended him wherein the charges against him are baseless, such as in the efforts ongoing right now in the state of Michigan to block him from even appearing on the ballot by some partisan actors. So I think life is more complicated than just black or white. I've had a variety of conversations with folks across the political spectrum and within the Michigan Republican Party. And obviously, there are plenty who disagree with votes that I have cast. But at the end of the day, disagreement does not necessarily need to lead to division. Where our party is right now, we cannot afford to be mired in a civil war because the only folks who are going to be the victors of that are the Democrats. I firmly believe that the Republican Party needs to be rowing, with a common voice in one direction going forward into 2024. That's why I will support the Republican nominee, whoever comes out of that process, up to and including if that's Donald Trump. Again, I have serious differences and disagreements with him, but when it comes down to it, it is too important for the future of this country to just not focus solely on making Joe Biden a one-term president and reversing much of the economic damage that his policies that have been aided and abetted by the Democratic majority in the Senate these past 3 years, what that has brought to this country.
So what would you say to voters who have trouble squaring or reconciling those two positions, both in one year, a couple of years ago, voting to impeach the former president, but then also saying you would support that same person if he becomes the nominee?
No, we live in a two-party system, right? Not everything is black or white. One of my biggest frustrations has been how many folks say, well, I disagree with this policy, but you got to either completely love somebody or completely hate somebody. That's not reality, right? The reality is I'm going, as a candidate and as an individual, I'm going to call things out when I see them and disagree with them, but I'm also not going to let that cloud my judgment when it comes to things that need to happen. And just because I may have had issues with President Trump and may still have issues from time to time, that does not make me somebody who wants to see Joe Biden get another term. Right now, we're in a very tenuous political situation. We're in a difficult moment for the country. And it's important to have folks who can see beyond just the black or white, yes or no, simple answers and try to get at something that is more reflective of where the public is and more reflective of the solutions that we need to implement in order to get us past this so we're not just lurching from crisis to crisis constantly, always in a state of emergency and never able to focus on that long term.
All right, unfortunately, we have run out of time, but hopefully we can have you back on so that voters can get a better idea of where you stand on some of those hot button issues. But again, Peter Meijer, we thank you for your time.
I appreciate it. Have a great evening.